Our next speaker is a seasoned consultant with experience in technology innovation, business analysis, business process reengineering, project management, and business relationship management. Please welcome the Director of Digital Enablement for the City of Edmonton, Canada, Soumya Ghosh.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Soumya Ghosh, Director with the City of Edmonton. My topic today, let's see, perfect, is to talk a little bit about partnerships and how at the city we have leveraged partnerships to bring in innovation, particularly around the smart city realm. Now, before I jump onto the presentation, I'll just like to give a little bit of a context. So, digital enablement, I report to a branch at the city called Open City and Technology. It's essentially, it used to be called the IT branch, and I was, at that time, before November, I was part of a branch called Open City and Innovation. In November, we merged them together to cover like the entire spectrum of technology, starting from innovation all the way to IT operations. The digital enablement is kind of on this side, on the innovation piece, and programs such as Smart City, Open Data, Business and Technology Innovation are some of the aspects that we deliver. Now, a key aspect of my group or my team is to not just deliver like technology innovations like the Big Bang, $40 million projects, but also to try and pilot new technologies. And my group has the flexibility both in terms of execution as well as we are allowed to fail. Now, in a municipal environment, it's extremely rare that you have a team dedicated to try out things, but that's really the mandate of digital enablement. In June of 2017, 6 months into the whole spectrum of digital enablement, innovation and partnership, we started with this vision of what a smart city will look like for Edmonton. Now, we looked at different definitions and we talked about it. We talked to our stakeholders, to our innovation ecosystem, to our business partners as well. And it's like, hey, what a smart city means to Edmonton. And we realized that it's less about the technology and more about the impact technology makes to the lives of people. Now, smart city strategy, and I'll encourage you to go and take a look at the document, but it's essentially talks about all 9 aspects of services that the city provides and how technology could impact each of those. Now, WCCD played a big role because when we looked into the measurement criteria and figured out, I was trying to figure out how do we measure where we are today, where we should be going, what are the gaps, and what kind of projects we should be looking at. That's where we figure that the WCCD has an overall encompassing set of measurements, which kind of let us realize that it's important to take a holistic view at the city and not just a siloed view on any one aspect of being a smart city. When we began this journey, so we kind of defined the overall framework, we defined the strategy, we engaged with our stakeholders. During that engagement process, we realized that the innovation ecosystem, as we call it as in Edmonton, has 4 distinct players. Edmonton being a municipality which kind of heads the government of Alberta's offices and whatnot, public sector plays a large role in our ecosystem. And public sector here includes obviously the provincial government, but the municipal government and other government agencies as well. Next, we looked at academia. Obviously, we have 5 post-secondary institutions in Edmonton. We have more than 100,000 post-secondary students. Most of them are adult education base, and we also have a pretty good private sector. Now, in the academics world, like public sector, academia, and private sector, when you mix all these three together, it's called like a triple helix model of innovation. And we were like, okay, fair enough, and did some little bit more digging, and we realized that, well, the one key aspect we are missing is our residents. So we cannot just innovate with only our partners. We need to bring in the residents to the ecosystem as well. Now, that's not to say that they were not part of the ecosystem. It's just the realization helped us take a more holistic view into how a municipality could innovate with the help of their partners. The previous thinking style was that the city will have answers to all the problems that the residents are facing, and they are kind of, the understanding was that the city needs to always come up with the solution by itself. And through this particular perspective, we kind of tried to change that. Again, not to say it was not happening, but this was more of a formalized way to understand or realize that this is how a municipality should be moving forward. Now, as part of the analysis, when we were having this conversation, and we engaged with more than 150 organizations, probably more than 500 individuals, more than 200 one-on-one interviews to kind of get an understanding of where people do stand. Now, for each of this segment, I'll go through the opportunities and challenges, but it's actually two sides of the same coin, and this is what creates the dilemma. In most cases is what I've noticed or realized. So public sector, though a lot of municipalities talk about like our problems are very unique, we have noticed that they are not that unique. There is a certain level of like maybe an 80% of match as to the kind of problem that Edmonton is facing versus Calgary or Toronto. Probably the scale is different, but the problems that we are trying to solve is very similar. I'll not say it's the same. So for any startup companies or civic tech groups or partners, having solved Edmonton's problem is easily scalable. And that's kind of the value add that a municipality brings, that, hey, if you solve our problem, probably there is a high chance, not a guarantee, that you'll be able to sell the products to other municipalities as well. I mean, we do have some flexibility in changing the regulations and the laws and the policies around things. Municipalities are uniquely positioned to create what's called as a living lab. Not a new concept, but that's something a municipality or a provincial government, a government entity in particular, can do well. And for startup companies in particular, we have noticed that when they have worked for a municipality and they have done a good job, it acts as a really good reference for them to go and scale globally. The challenges, when we talk with some of these companies, they hated our procurement process. They're like, God, it's I need to have like at least a $500,000 investment to just develop an RFP competing with the big vendors, right? That's insane. First of all, you guys are too slow. And this is like actual interviews that we conducted, and they said that it does not interest us because, first of all, we do not have that much of money or capacity. And then we cannot wait for like 8 months to win a contract. We are in a very fast-moving environment. So those kind of issues, the legal issues, the public perceptions, and the drain on resources are some of the key aspects that we kind of understood, like their perspective. It was primarily the startup communities. With residents, again, we realized that they have diverse skill set, they're a great problem solver, they are kind of our ultimate consumer, and with certain products, we could potentially do a great bit of user testing with them before we release the product out. But at the same time, with that understanding that they have diverse skills and they are great problem solver, we realized that understanding who to reach out to in a population of 1 million, that entire process was getting pretty expensive. Just to give a scale, I mean, I'm sure you probably have done a lot of engagement, but when I heard figures around how much money we spend in just trying to understand how transit should shape and form on 5 different criterias, and I realized that we have spent like $1 million to understand that, and when I looked at the data, it was a split at 20% for all 5 criterias. I'm like, that does not tell us anything. We just spent $1 million trying to understand what's important on 5 criteria, and I got a pretty much a 20% slice on everything. So it looks like everything is important, right? So it's pretty expensive. So these are some of the challenges. Not that it cannot be overcome, but it's something that we identified. With the private sector companies, when we reached out to them again, they were very responsive. They had great access to subject matter experts, access to funds, global outreach, and we do have some great partnership with them, but it comes down to like the perception of a conflict of interest. Like, well, why did you only go with this telecom company and not the others? Or why did you go with only this construction company and not others, right? So from my perspective, it was not one or the other. It's like, well, just because they approached us first, but that in a government environment, that does not make the cut. We have to be transparent and open, which kind of caused a little bit of a challenge. And obviously they do have to satisfy their shareholders and things like that. So the conversation always boiled down to what's in it for them. And then last, the academia. Now, the universities were like very supportive. And the best relationship we had with the universities in this particular innovation ecosystem was with the university. A couple of reasons I believe for that support is the change that universities are going through right now. So a lot of the professors, the chairs, and the deans that I've had conversation with is saying that we do have all the students and they're executing on projects and they're delivering new products and whatnot, but those are not applied. And in the educational system, the more applied we become, the more value it provides for the students as well as the professors. So there is that change that's happening, and I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why they're more approachable. So applied research, hands-on education skills, and motivation is some of the factors that we identified as an opportunity. Like, hey, they're all ready to go. They're just waiting for a real-life problem to solve, not a theoretical one. And there is a shift. So in my initial conversation with the universities is like, hey, guys, you are thinking 10 years out. I know I'm 20 years behind. So how do I bridge this 30 years gap? And there's like, okay, fine. Can you move 10 years ahead, and we can probably come down 15 years, some few years back, kind of a conversation. So that was great, and that's kind of a great starting point for us. And for them, the challenges were like finding practical problems and opportunities, and of course, a little bit of funding. Now, funding, what I noticed is if I can give them a real good problem that they would like to solve, funding is available. It's not just a typical city way of funding that I want to get this project done and I need a $10 million. Probably that was not working with the universities. Few things we did, and this list is not exhaustive. It's just some examples. Having an understanding of these opportunities and constraints or challenges, as it's listed in this presentation, we said, okay, fine. For the smart cities challenges, let's engage with all these stakeholders and see what value they bring. Now, the Smart Cities Challenge in itself was a great platform to bring them all together, though we leveraged this $50 million lottery for more than just the challenge. But it's very unlikely that when we were having a conversation in the past that our topic was around improving the health of Edmontonians, and we are talking about integrating health data and whatnot. So rarely it happens that on the same table we have folks from Alberta Health Services, Alberta Health, and the doctor network, which is called the Primary Care Networks, or the PCNs in Alberta, as well as the University of Alberta's public health researchers, the Alberta Innovates Health Solutions health innovation ecosystem, the pharmaceutical companies, and funders essentially coming together on one table trying to sort this through. And it rarely happens when And I should say, probably for me, it's rare that when you get a letter of support from the Minister of Health, the CEO of Alberta Health Services, the VP of Alberta Innovates, and private companies at the same time. So a Smart Cities Challenge was a great platform to bring together all these partners, obviously with a single aim or a vision of winning this particular challenge. Engaging with the civic tech is something we do also take very seriously. And we have gained a lot by engaging with the civic tech community. And I'll talk about the results in my wrap up. But essentially, we hosted a number of symposiums and summits to bring together all these citizens who know about technology, who lives and breathes technology, and get like ideas from them, have them work on products and things like that. The civic tech engagement, though, we have been trying it out for 1 year or so. We have done a couple of hackathons, and Health Hack recently, as part of the Smart Cities Challenge, we kind of changed the model a little bit based on what feedback we received from the civic tech community. Some feedback being that, hey, one-day hackathon does not work. It's too hard to come up with a solution in a day. The second is like there is no reward for it. And then what happens to the solution that we build? So based on those past comments, we created the Health Hack, which was essentially like they were given like a month to build on a prototype. The award was the total of $7,500. The winner got $5,000, then $2,500. And what it showed is like the outcome was twofold for this particular Health Hack. The first is like obviously we got great interest from the civic tech community. They felt that the municipality is actually listening to them and working on their or adopting their products. And the second piece was for our branch. Through this 30 days, we were able to showcase what's doable or possible in a 30-day window. Because we, in a traditional project management environment, probably would have just drafted 50% of your charter in 30 days. So through this particular hackathon, we kind of delivered a prototype in 30 days with $7,500, which is pretty, shouldn't say, it's pretty affordable. And lastly, we also hosted, and we have been doing an open science event for 4 years now. This is kind of a partnership with the University of Alberta where we release a lot of open data. I guess we are a leader in the open data space in Canada. And the University of Alberta master's students, they do analysis on top of our open data and come up with reports. We call them as poster events, and they present it to all councillors at City Hall through this particular event. And year after year, we have seen like different ideas coming up, being like how transit is affecting our seniors, how kid-friendly our cities are, how efficient the bike lanes are, and things like that. And we do take all these analysis and feed into our city planning group so that they can take a look at it, understand different perspectives, and go from there. So these are just probably 20% of what we do in terms of partnership, but some of the avenues aiming at a different population base with a different outcome, and seeing the results from these particular engagements. In terms of now coming to the results, what we have been able to achieve so far in this last year or so is cost savings for sure. Some examples will be like instead of coming up or building a new platform to notify citizens as to when a new permit gets submitted to the city or when there is a traffic disruption. I mean, all this data are available on Open Data Platform. A citizen actually took a open source platform that was built by Code for America group called Citigram, and he redeployed the Citigram platform on top of our open data pretty much for free and gave us this awesome platform that we are now acknowledging and asking our citizens to go and get all the notifications from that platform. From a cost savings perspective, if we were to manage the project and deliver, it's probably $500,000. A few others. As part of the Smart Cities Challenge, we did a lot of virtual reality. We engaged with our people using virtual reality as a medium. So instead of going and saying, hey, we will build a smart city, we actually built an app. We gave it to people and was like, hey, wear it and see how the future of Edmonton will look like. That app was, again, built by one of our civic tech groups. $500 is what I probably spent on pizza, but that's what I got. It was an amazing app built by a citizen, and the people loved it. We actually were in Enterprise Square. I'm not sure how many of you will know. It's just a big subway station. People go through it, and we were standing there with all the VR glasses, and people kind of experienced it, so that was good. Right now, the city is building a new fire hall, and we are actually building an augmented reality app for people to see how it will look in the future when the building is kind of under construction. These are some of the examples, and don't get me wrong, the intent was not to save money, but that's kind of a desired outcome that we are getting through all these engagements. Data integration is a great example. Through all of these partnerships, now we were able to put together a loneliness data that city gathered as part of their survey process with the hospitalization record from Alberta Health Services, which is like the health record. Now, don't get me wrong, we didn't get access to the data, but Alberta Health Services with a student or a researcher out of University of Alberta were able to merge them two and determine a correlation of 0.97. So essentially saying that people who do get hospitalized for more than 2 weeks, there is a 97 correlation that he or she feels lonely, costing the system $4.3 billion yearly. So these are some examples of data integration that we have done. A few other examples will include, like, students, again, in the post-secondaries, always merging these data sets, coming up with new insights. Disruptive technology through the health hack, though it was not intentional, but one of the group did try a blockchain-based technology to do research on cannabis consumption, which is anonymized and just a new technology to gather all this data using blockchain technology. For digital enablement, our citizens actually, based on our open data, build apps which will show how much the assessed value of properties are in and around Edmonton, your neighbors' property values and taxes and things like that. When we released the new transit route network, a citizen again picked it up in an app to showcase to the fellow residents as to what that changes will look like, how it will impact them, what the new routes will look like, what the new timings will look like. Instead of just a PDF that we released, someone actually built an app out of it. And the fun one is actually photo enforcement. So we do release all our photo enforcement data as to, on our open data portal, as to where photo enforcement will take place in the week ahead. And University of Alberta student actually built an app that will warn you if there is a possibility of a photo radar camera ahead of you. Now, I was talking to him the other day, and he's like, you know what? He just set it up. It's all for free, but he added a button saying, please donate for my education. And he is getting pretty good return from his investment of probably a week's time. And he's, I shouldn't say that he's paying his education based on this app, but he's getting a pretty good return on that. And the final one is the culture change. So essentially, that's what I was talking about when I began, is like the shift in culture that we always have to go to the big vendors to find a solution. The project always has to be $500,000, $50 million. It has to be well tried and tested, and it has to be a multi-year, like 3-4 years kind of a project. It's not always true. Like we are gradually seeing a shift in culture where we are more flexible and agile, and we are trying new things with different tech groups, be it civic tech, be it university students. And it's also kind of impacting the way we hire. Like in my team right now, 25% of the my team members are co-op students. And actually, we, as a leadership team, are learning from them the new technologies that's on the horizon right now. So these are some of the cultural changes that we have also noticed based on the approach that we have taken. And have 20 seconds to go, and I'll stop right now. And thank you. Any questions for me? Well, you have got 5 seconds. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, y'all.